like to thank you all for coming today to celebrate with us after the Appraisal Foundation meeting. It is our 1 year anniversary. It's a little bit less than a year. We started on June 29th last year with the Urban League Super Saturday in Atlanta, and it's been a heck of a journey ever since. I'm going to speak for a couple of minutes, but we have some really smart, fascinating industry people here that I'd like to give an opportunity to speak. Yesterday was a great opportunity. We had our official signing ceremony with the Department of Labor, with the first public apprenticeship program in the country, and that was a pretty momentous occasion. When I started the program, well, let me start with that. I'm a certified journal appraiser, and I've been appraising since 1986. I took my first appraisal class in 1986, and I won a scholarship from the Cincinnati Board of Realtors to pay for my Appraisal Institute classes at Ohio State. And my first appraisal teacher, actually I didn't do so well in the class because I was frustrated. He just kept talking about, Thaddeus, you gotta look at the market. And every time I ask a question, you gotta look at the market. I was like, why don't you just say you don't know the answer? So eventually I did take a look at the market. It's been an amazing career and an amazing journey, and I've been blessed to be able to do it for that long, and I just want to share it. Lately, the profession that I love has been under attack, and the appraisers have been somewhat traumatized. A lot of things have happened. When I started, we started this thing to actually advocate for black people and the undervaluation in the space. There was no representation. There was a wealth gap that was there and that was glaring. Actually, today in talking with one of our speakers, the renowned economist Bill Cunningham, the wealth gap actually is a house. If you think about the average price of a house, that is what the wealth gap is, and that's what we're here working, trying to rectify. So first and foremost, we were able to establish the Appraisal Apprenticeship Program because the profession is over 65% over 50 years old, and less than 7% are under 35 years old. So it's mission critical all across the board in that area. There's nobody coming back to replace the appraisers. So I don't want to necessarily go down that rabbit hole, but the big story has been bias, and I shared my opinions about the bias at lunch. There is bias, but the bias is more impactful because the appraisal model is outdated and broken. If we update the appraisal model, we then are able to mitigate the bias. And we can do that based on the technology that's now available. We can use evidence-based, data-driven market analysis in order to get a more accurate number and remove the appraisal process from credibility to reliability through analysis. So these are the things that we plan to teach in our apprenticeship program, allowing our students to be able to compete at the next level. We've been blessed to have partners along the way. One of our biggest partners is the USDA, U.S. Forest Service. Now, what I'm going to do real quick, and I'm trying to do it as succinctly as possible, give you all a little bit of a playbook of how I got here today it's a little bit longer than the last year. It actually started in March of last year, 2023, in Kansas City at the VA conference. So one of the things that when I was in college, we would go to a party and some of my friends would be like, oh man, it ain't no women in here. And I was like, well, bro, I don't know about you, but I only need one. And so I've used that philosophy everywhere I go. And as I've traveled the country, everybody not talk to me, but I don't leave without at least talking to one person and making one contact and I'll give you that contact everywhere that I've been over the past year. So it started with me going to Kansas City for the VA conference. And while I was in Kansas City, I had the pleasure of meeting James Hayes, the chief appraiser from the VA, and Jeff Hogan from Valigent. Jeff then introduced me to Mark Sennett from Fifth Third Bank, which led me to Cincinnati to work on the Cincinnati Port Authority project. Also, James introduced me to Melissa Bond. So the following week, I was in Savannah at the Aero Conference, and I met Melissa Bond. While in Savannah meeting Melissa Bond, so let me roll back a little bit. Melissa Bond is from Mississippi, and she has the only practicum program in the country. And so she taught me the difference between the practicum program and the other pathways to appraising. And she beat me up for about an hour, making sure that I didn't get them confused. And I love Melissa because we didn't agree on absolutely anything, but we did have the conversation, and there was a mutual respect, and I appreciated the fact that she took the time out to speak with me. And so also while in Savannah, I was able to meet Anthony Boland from the DC board, and I met, who else did I meet? I met Angela Jamat from California, and so from Savannah, where did we go? I ended up going to Cincinnati, working on a Port Authority project, and in between there, I was in New York. I graduated from the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business Program. So while I was there, I was supposed to be working on developing and expanding my appraisal business. But while I was there, I thought about this idea of 10,000 Black and minority appraisers. And so instead of doing my assignment, I was bugging all my classmates, asking them what they thought about my idea. And I asked my advisors at Goldman Sachs what they thought about it. And it was like, go build it and bring it back. And so that same Monday while I was in New York, it was crazy. One of the kids that we had visited at Fayetteville State kept calling my phone. Somewhere he got the crazy idea about an internship. I was like, dude, I'm at Goldman Sachs, I gotta call you back. But he continued to call. This kid called me like 5 times in 2 days. And I was like, man, I gotta get him an internship. He wouldn't leave me alone. So while I was in New York at Goldman Sachs, I reached out to Jillian White, who was a part of the group that I was on in Cincinnati. And she said, well, if you're gonna be in New York, stop by. I'm having a thought leaders group. And so at her dinner at her house, I got there late, but there was Pam Perry from Freddie Mac, Terry from, I can't remember Terry's last name, from Fannie Mae, Charu, Keenan Chin from Clear Capital. There was a couple other folks there from other organizations. So the ball keeps rolling. Eventually, I end up in Cincinnati at this Port Authority project, which was interesting because what I didn't realize is when I got to Cincinnati is where I'm from, and it was kind of like a homecoming of my whole career of folks that was there. So on this panel in Cincinnati was Bill Garber, and he joked that, no, I'm sorry, not Bill Garber. He wasn't there. I'm sorry, all y'all look alike. That wasn't fair. that was Jerry Urick who was there. And so Jerry is the chief appraiser for PNC, and Jerry joked that, I remember Thaddeus back when he had hair. And so I'd worked with Jerry Urick. I'd worked with Scott Reuter's dad in Cincinnati. And Scott's the chief appraiser from Freddie Mac. And his dad, we worked together at the city of Cincinnati. And speaking of the city of Cincinnati, that was a part of my commercial journey. And since 1992, I am still the only African-American appraiser in Cincinnati, which really is a sad commentary on the industry. And I've lived in Atlanta for 17 years. So that's another reason why I'm standing here, because I didn't feel like I actually did enough in the process. So everywhere we continue to go and do, things just continue to happen. So then we finally get to Super Saturday. Then after Super Saturday, I had the crazy idea to come to Washington, D.C. to the Appraisal Foundation meeting, where I was told that I was unprofessional. I made people uncomfortable because I had on the 10,000 Black Appraisers t-shirt. And so I proceeded to speak and do what I do. And I met several people once I got to the Appraisal Foundation. One of the first people that embraced me and held conversation with me was John Russell. At the time, John was #2 at the American Society of Appraisers. Now today, he leads the American Society of Appraisers, and they are one of our strategic partners that we have an agreement with, which I'm very proud of. So from there, there was a happy hour here at the Appraisal Foundation. And at the happy hour, Kelly Davids introduced me to Tim Hansen. And after Kelly introduced me to Tim Hansen, 2 weeks later, Tim had me on a Zoom call with the Department of Interior. And I was like, wow, how did we get here? And so there was several people on that phone call. And then from that phone call, it was suggested that you might be interested in going to HBCU week at the White House. And I was like, well, sure, why not? So when was that? In September. So in September, I show up to HBCU week here in DC. And if I could tell you, that was one of the best weeks of my life. I had a ball. I started my college career at Tennessee State in 1984. And I tell everybody, the only thing that was missing from HBCU week was Purple Rain coming out of the dormitories and Jerry curls. So if we would have had those, it would have made it all complete. But one of the things that is lacking in the industry is representation. There's no Black chief appraisers at any of the major lenders. There's no senior Black appraiser at any other industries. And there's no staff appraisers that look like us in the space. So you start talking about getting down to the fee appraisers, they're few and far in between. So sometimes you just need to see somebody that looks like you, that can understand the barriers to entry to help you get across the line. So when I'm in those places, there's not a whole lot of warm reception. However, at HBCU week at the White House, there was a lot of folks that looked like me at very high levels and positions and wanted to have conversations on what we can do to sort of move this thing forward. And one of those people being Mr. L. Rand Denson from the U.S. Forest Service. Now, I messed it all the way up. I had him running the whole Forest Service. I think he's down to lands and minerals for USDA, and he's the acting director. But I promise you, he knows every tree in the Forest Service within less than a 1%. I'm pretty sure he can give you every tree, every tributary, inside out. So it's been a pleasure to work with him in the USDA Forest Service. We're talking and negotiating with a lot of the federal government agencies. One of our other governmental agencies is the Policy Center with the USDA, working on heirs property, and they're based out of Alcorn State. Please don't say Alcorn, it's Alcorn. You gotta get that Alcorn. So I had to get some practice with pronouncing Alcorn. And so that's been a pleasure. It's just been incredible. We worked on a project in Cincinnati, a discrimination project for Terry Horton. And we were doing some work with the Community Reinvestment Coalition with that brilliant young man there with the green shirt and the purple tie, Jacob Lillian. He's now moved on to greener pastures at the Justice Department. So we had worked a couple of cases together over the years, and it's just been a pleasure, and I'm thankful that he came. He's written some incredible policies around discrimination in the valuation space. So again, everywhere that I've been, everything just sort of picks up and moves forward. Also, while at HBCU Week at the White House, we met Joanne Hill from Commerce Department, Don Cravens from Commerce, and so we have the brilliant economist, Mr. Bill Cunningham, standing here because I had a chance meeting with him while we were at Commerce meeting with Joanne Hill. And he was just walking around the halls of the Commerce Department. So we bumped and we just started talking and having conversations. So again, everywhere I've been, it's been an incredible opportunity and to meet somebody. And so we started our 1890 land grant college tour. We were able to get through half of the 1890 land grants. We went to the tribal convention in Las Vegas, and we plan on starting our 1994 tribal college tour in January of next year. But while at the tribal conference tour, we met the incredible Greg Powell back there. Now, just like Elrand knows every tree in the forest, Greg can quote you every, part and parcel and number, every valuation number, every update. They recently updated fair market value in the federal space. And I know I'm messing it up, but he's gonna come up here and clean it up. And they've also updated the highest and best use to include the output to the end user. So all of these are factored in, and every time I talk to these guys, I gotta go, it's frustrating because I gotta go back and start reading, because it's a bunch of stuff that I don't know, and I keep just trying to make sure that I'm able to give our students the best information available. And so we've been blessed to have a whole slew of speakers that I will have come up, and I'm going to actually stop right now so everybody can get time to speak, because they are way smarter and got a lot more to say than I do. And I'm just blessed to have been able to be chosen to move this movement forward. Last year was a moment. This year, I believe in my heart that it is truly grown into a movement. And I'm very thankful that God has blessed me to be in this position. And we're looking for partners all across the country. And the most important thing for our partners is that our partners have structured integrity. We want to make sure that we do shared stewardship so everybody is able to benefit, and then do cross-mentoring. That's the most important part of this, because the education is one part. That's the formal education. But more important, or just as important as the formal education, is the informal education. Those are the circles of support to make sure that nobody falls through the cracks and everybody is lifted and held up. And those are the things that we want to try to be able to emphasize to get people across the finish line, to close the wealth gap so they can enjoy this beautiful, wonderful career. They need them and they need careers. So that's what I'm most proud of. And I'm going to stop and have Mr. Denson come up. I'm going to lower the mic. I'm a little taller than he is, so I want to make sure that...
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Can everybody hear me? I'm Elrin Denson. I'm the Acting Director of Lands, Minerals, and Geology Management with the U.S. Forest Service. And so I want to give you a little context, because folks ask me, well, what does appraising have to do with the USDA Forest Service? Well, we have 193 million acres of National Forest System lands. Yeah, we have 193 million acres of National Forest System lands. Within those 193 million acres of National Forest System lands, we oversee about 74,000 authorizations, and those are individuals that have permits and are authorized to work on National Forest System lands. That consists of 18,000 miles of power lines, about 6,600 miles of oil and gas pipelines, about 1,400 communication sites, facilitating the work with AT&T, T-Mobile, Verizon, Crown Castle, American Tower. We have about 14,000 recreation residences. Those are individuals that own cabins on National Forest System lands, and they lease the land from the Forest Service. We have 250 hydropower facilities providing providing power to about 70 million people. We have 2,000 reservoirs providing drinking water to over 60 million people within the United States. We do somewhere in the neighborhood of about $161 million on an annual basis. We have an impact of about 120,000 private sector jobs, and we facilitate about $30 billion to the gross domestic product in the United States from the program alone. From that perspective, folks are saying, well, how does that tie in? Well, when you have a communication site or communication tower, the fees that come off of that are calculated and they are appraised. And so with some of the things that we do, we have not been able to, because of the lack of appraisers that we have in the agency, to calculate those particular fee schedules or recalculate those fee schedules. Some of those fee schedules are 20 and some of those fee schedules are 30 years old. Now I see some of you around here who are probably not quite 30 years old, and those fee schedules are still in that particular vein. When we start to look at what has transpired over the last 20 to 30 years, we can take out our cell phones, we can take out fiber optics, we can take out all these particular things, and we just have only indexed those fees for the past 20 or 30 years. So once you get to a real appraisal of what those particular fees are or could be, we're talking tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars that could be going back into the economy from just those particular fee schedules, alone. So those are some of the connections. And so we've been looking for ways and looking for opportunities to grow our appraisal field within the Forest Service. And so when I met Thaddeus, at the White House Conference on HBCUs, and I met Francis, there as well, and we just started talking about what we can do and conceptualizing some of the things that was in his thought process, some of the things that was coming from Francis, some of the things that were coming from me, and we said, this seems to be a great trifecta of knowledge base. So let's see what we can do in this particular time. And so we started to engage, and we started a conversation around there. And then we said, okay, well, I think you all need to come to this gathering that's an evening social. There's going to be a lot of people there, a lot of influential people. And so they were able to get it, I was able to get them into the 1890 Foundation after, I won't call it an after party, but a meet and greet. And there was a lot of influential people there. I mean, there was congressional people, there was individuals from the mayor's office, there was individuals from industry, there was, so it was a cornucopia, of folks in the room. And from there, I think things just spun on from there. And so we got really engaged, and they started asking, specific questions about how can we move this forward? How can we get interns? How can we do these particular things? So I told Thaddeus, I said, well, I have an intern program that we are facilitating. And I said, I have some spots, but I only have 3. And he said, well, I need 20. And I said, I only have 3. And he said, I need 20. And I said, I only have 3. That's what I can afford. That's what I can fund you. And so he said, well, I guess I'll take the 3. And so we looked at it, and we looked at how we could grow the program, how we could add particular pieces, to the program, how we could add a learning management system that could facilitate our courses inside the Forest Service, as well as those particular courses outside of the agency that are generally behind our firewall. So how can we get those courses out so individuals can take advantage of those particular courses that we have? So we worked on some of those particular pieces, as well through a learning management system that we had set up at Alabama A&M. Now, Thaddeus and 10,000 Minority Appraisers have their own learning management system, and we have been able to facilitate the internal courses that we have within the agency, as well as the external courses that he is facilitating from the appraisal perspective. And so the kids don't have to come behind our firewall to try to get those courses. They can get those courses from those learning management systems. And we can show if an individual may want to be an appraiser, they may want to be a realty specialist, but they may not have the aptitude for it. So we can set the criteria, within those particular students. We can say that we want them to have an 80 percentile, and we did. We said we wanted them to pass at least 80%, and then we would be assured that they would know the material. So all the kids passed at over 80%. Most of them passed at 83%, up to 100% of those particular courses, that we had out there. And so this was the catalyst for the particular students that we have now. And so we have 20 students that are in the program now. We have students in Southern California on the San Bernardino National Forest. We have 4 students there. We have 2 students on the Coronado National Forest in Arizona. We have 4 students on the National Forest and Grasslands of Texas. And that's 2 students from HBCU, and there's 2 students from our Job Corps centers as well. And we have 2 students on the Bighorn National Forest in Sheridan, Wyoming. We have 2 students on the National Forest in Alabama, one in Andalusia, Alabama, and one on the Tuskegee National Forest in Alabama. We have 2 students on the Francis Marion Sumter National Forest in South Carolina. And the 2 happiest individuals, let me back up. We have 2 students as well as an additional partnership on the Medawan Tallgrass Prairie just south of Chicago. And we are in coordination with the Environmental Collective in regards to a core that they have of high school students that we are bringing through a particular program, as well, teaching them, and they are teaching them about natural resource management and how they can facilitate and grow and matriculate, into careers in National Forest System, on National Forest System lands. The 2 individuals that are the happiest out of all are we have 2 interns on the El Yunque National Forest, our only tropical rainforest in the country, in Puerto Rico. Every time we get on a Zoom call, you can't contain them inside the screen. They're jumping. They are so excited, about this particular opportunity. But more importantly, with that, I was not able to just do the 3. We had so many high caliber students that some of them ended up getting additional opportunities. And with those additional opportunities, it begat more opportunities for others. So we were able to actually allow 10,000 Minority Appraisers to bring on 6 students this summer. And so, as a matter of fact, we just had a valuation class this evening talking about what we do in terms of land exchange and how the valuation process is instrumental, in that particular piece. If we don't have the correct valuations, we can't make the land exchanges or the purchases and the donations that we have within the agency. And so that was a class that we had today, but we're stepping that course down next week and doing another evaluation course specifically with the students in mind, explaining to them how the valuation process, how to do an opinion of value from that perspective. So that is a course that the kids, I keep saying kids, the interns will have as a part of their training starting off next week. So with this, this truly doesn't happen. I know Tim and some others are here on the federal space. What we have here today is from a signing ceremony yesterday with the Department of Labor. That doesn't happen in the federal space this fast unless there is something guiding this, you know, from a divine intervention, because this just doesn't happen. I've been in DC for 10 years. There's some things that I've been trying to do for 10 years and I haven't been able to do them. There's some things out there for 5 years and someone just said, wow, let's do that. And I was like, well, I thought about that 5 years ago. And so now we're just only getting the chance to do some of those things now. And for this to happen truly, and I said a year, it actually happened in less than a year. It probably happened within an 8-month time frame. That is unheard of, you know, in the federal space in Washington, D.C., especially during an election cycle. That doesn't happen. That just really doesn't happen. So what we have here before us is something that is amazing. I think it's something that will, as Thaddeus says, you know, we would have some power and program behind this particular mission. And as we have the 6 students, you know, from an appraisal perspective, from 10,000 minority appraisers, and the 20 students that we have, I can only see that to grow if this is year 1. And as Thaddeus said, you know, the kid called him 5 times. Well, I had a young lady, one of the interns, I think she called me 3 times in 3 different meetings I was in, wanting to get some information about moving forward. And that young lady was actually accepted into the scholarship program. She was accepted, and what did she do? Because she is going to be the week of July 23rd through the 26th, and she wanted to make sure everything was in place. You know, when she comes here and stands before the Secretary of Agriculture and receives her award to the USDA 1890 Scholars Program, which pays for tuition, room, board, books. It also gives those students opportunity to work in the summer on an internship, and if they maintain 3-point GPA, it guarantees them a permanent position within the Department of Agriculture Forest Service. And so this is just some of the highlights of what has transpired over the last 8 months. And I don't know if we're taking questions. I'll take a question, but I don't know if that's the right time for this, or we'll go on to the next
presenter. I think they're going to catch you out there with the questions. He's got all the answers, so.
Now, I don't have the answers, but I got about 12 members in my family that have worked for the U.S. Forest Service, and I have one that can tell you the answers within less than a half a meter of where these trees are, because he facilitated being over the forest inventory and analysis, which is the U.S. Census for the Forest Service, basically. So we can give you a few of those particular items. I can't do it, but I can find someone who can do it. So with that, I'll stop it here, and I'll turn it back over to Thaddeus. If you have any questions, just look me up.
Now I guess I need to get on a chair to get to this microphone. Thanks, Elred. Again, Elred is a proud alumnus of Alabama A&M. Won't hesitate to tell anybody. I'm so thankful to have met him at the HBCU week. Brilliant man, and I call him the wizard. But in that space, what we've also been able to do is we have a learning management system that's second to none. It's the same one that they use at Alabama A&M for Job Corps, for the federal government. We're able to lift up the other courses to be able to outsource without having to put their firewalls in jeopardy. This is how we will be administering our program across the country. And I'd like to bring up one of the most brilliant people in cybersecurity the architect of our LMS platform, Ms. Danietta Fleming. She is absolutely amazing and a godsend, and I'm very thankful for her. And her brain is at a level that I can't even begin to conceive. So I'm going to move it and let her have this here.
All right. Well, good evening, everyone. As Thaddeus shared, my name is Danietta Fleming Magana. I'm the CEO and founder of Covenant Security Solutions. And as the name states, we're actually a cybersecurity company. We've been in the business for 21 years. Most of our background has been within the Department of Defense, Department of Army, intelligence community, and then most recently we expanded out. And you're probably wondering, why is this cyber person standing in front of me? So I'm going to answer that question. Over the years, our clients have come to us and said, hey, how do we get information? How are we able to take the knowledge that you have and actually build that capacity within our organization? And part of answering that question has been for us to create a learning management system that allows the organizations to be able to bring in the knowledge, the sharing of that knowledge in order to be able to expand and grow within their respective industries. And so with that, we had the opportunity to provide that same service to the U.S. Forest Service and now also to 10K-MA. So they have their own learning management system, and as he was mentioning, from a cyber standpoint, a lot of how the ability to get accurate evaluations are going to happen is not just from diversifying the workforce, but also being able to look at a data-driven approach. And he's drilled that into my head more times than not, that this is going to be about looking at the data, being able to have the information that people need to make really accurate decisions. And so that's important from two different aspects where Covenant is supporting 10K-MA. One aspect is in terms of building that workforce. So when we look at the learning management system, we're talking about being able to take students from across all 50 states, bring them into the platform and give them different modes of being able to get to information. So it's not just going to be looking at e-learning courses, but being able to have on-demand virtual training, being able to take them to locations where they can get training as well. So for example, we're working with the illustrious George Dell over here in terms of being able to bring market analysis to the table. In addition, being able to bring courses that are traditionally part of the platform. So for example, drone training. So looking at how technology can be used to enhance the accuracy and to enhance the data-driven approach to real estate appraisal. The second piece that we're assisting him with is, as we mentioned with data, it is always important within cybersecurity to talk about, we have a little triad we call CIA. And I'm not talking about the intelligence agency, I'm talking about confidentiality, integrity, and availability. And within that CIA, the most important part is having data integrity. And without that data integrity, people can't trust what you're providing to them. So if I give you an appraisal, and I can't say without an unequivocal doubt that that has not been changed or modified in some way, then how do you be able to trust not only myself, but also be able to trust the information coming out of the industry? And so that's one of the second visionary pieces that Thaddeus has brought to the table in working with us, is to be able to look at the data that's being collected, be able to train that next generation of the workforce to think about, how do I handle this information? What are the things I need to think about? How is privacy being brought into this? And so that's probably one of the key functions that we're able to do, is to bring in the cybersecurity with what you're already doing in real estate, along with that data-driven approach that he's building out. So with that, if you don't have any questions, I want to thank you so much. And I'll turn it back over to Thaddeus.
Sorry, y'all, moving a little slow. One mic down. Okay, I'm back. Did y'all miss me? So, back to the program. Danietta is amazing. She's brilliant. Her and her team have been invaluable. I can't even begin to explain how important they are to me. Danietta, Gina, little butterfly, they all take good care of me. They protect me from dangers seen, dangers unseen. So I think that's an outgrowth of their cybersecurity mission. They protect me from myself. I can't begin to tell you how thankful and grateful I am. And next, I'd like to call up one of the most brilliant people I know, who is, he's been beating the drum of data science forever, long before I started beating the drum. And he was so incredibly gracious to share the knowledge and information with me. And what's even more important is in the method in which he teaches it. He's got a band of folks that are brainiacs sitting in the room working on this data science and this evidence-based valuation. And they spend time with me before class, they spend time with me after class, and I still don't get it. But they keep inviting me back, and they have continuous support, and they are the future of real estate. And so he is the father of database, evidence-driven analysis, which will eliminate bias in the appraisal process because it moves the process from credibility to reliability. It also allows you to measure the market in real time and catch the change in the market and the velocity of the change. And so he's got 1 million articles, 1 million slides, and he'll talk to you until the cows come home about the data science. I probably only pick up less than a percentage point of all the stuff he actually talks about. But I love him. He's a very sweet man. And I'm going to have Mr. George Dell come up and talk for a few minutes.
Hi, I'm George Dell, and I'd love to tell stories and make you laugh, but Thaddeus said, tell them what is evidence-based valuation and what are the benefits. I got 12 bullet points. With the time he gave me, that's about 23 seconds per bullet points, and that leaves 44 seconds for Q&A afterwards, okay? Thank you. See, I made you off. Yeah. Okay, what is evidence-based evaluation? Well, the ASC already covered it somewhat. It's data-centered instead of judgment-based or judgment-centered. No more, trust me, I'm an appraiser. I've been doing this for a long time. Here's the data. Here's what it shows. My background is economics and a lot of graduate level classes. And when the word bias came up, we never thought about racial bias or prejudice or anything like that. It was about analytic bias. And economists, statisticians, all they talked about was no bias and minimum variation. That was it. So one of the issues I ran into as I started being here was that nobody seemed to know the difference for appraisers, the difference between analytic bias and personal bias, and how analytic bias almost encourages personal bias. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. Evidence-based valuation comprises interaction of the human expert, the power of the computer and the data, through visualization. Human beings are very visual. We can see markets. 3 comps, 4 comps, we can understand that. 7 or 10 or 20, we don't get it. Visualization and the graphs that are so easily available nowadays. What does this get us? It gets us better results. Provides us more precision, which we call sureness, accuracy, which we call trueness, so sureness and trueness, and you got to ask the right question in the first place. We call that appropriateness. If you do all 3, you end up with scientific reproducibility. I can do something, you can follow my work, you get pretty much exactly the same result, or if there's a difference, we know where it came from. This enables risk analysis, reproducibility, and reliability results that Thaddeus talked about. Instead of trust me, it's here's my work. What your 3rd grade teacher told you, show your work. So that's what we're saying to do. So it takes advantage of today's data, computer power, and human interaction through visualization. What are the benefits? Well, it replaces the master-apprentice model that we had for 80 years, since the 1920s and 30s. When we weren't watching, the data changed, computer power changed, and yet we continued on with pick comps and make adjustments. Pick comps, make adjustments. We can do much better than that today. A surprising thing about my teaching this class is that the younger people got it right away. The younger people are used to scrolling and pointing and selecting and visualization stuff. The younger people have no problems with my class. The older people like me, I'm older, yeah. I just worked hard at it. They get it, so it's so appropriate, the direction we're going here, trying to get younger people in there that will enjoy it. Will enjoy it. It eliminates and minimizes and makes obvious, I believe, any personal bias. Because if you can be analytically unbiased, it precludes that opportunity to be personally biased, whether it's intentional or unintentional. If you have permission to do something, to run stop signs, I run stop signs all the time, right? How often do I stop for a stop sign? It's because I can get away with it. I mean, I'm human. Unfortunately, if biasness is allowed, we don't even think about it. We're going to be there. Your tribe is worse than my tribe. You knew that, didn't you? Yeah. You can't improve something until you can measure it. So that's our starting point, is measuring bias, measuring variability. And that's where data science is 80% getting the data right. So that's where we live. Okay. There's about 300 of us that belong to the community of asset analysts that Thaddeus mentioned. A lot of them are a heck of a lot better at doing this stuff than me, and they all are willing to give from their hearts and show help one-on-one and as a group. When I teach, half my class is other people contributing that do the stuff better than me. I believe that we can make appraisers messengers of the truth, of real value, price, rather than those who get accused of being biased. A lot of people get lumped into that. Appraisers inherently are not biased. I'll put it out there. However, they are like the rest of us. They're like the rest of the population. You give them permission to be biased, some will be, and the problems happen. Almost done. I'm just going to read this one paragraph. People in all areas of our industry can be happier, regain personal integrity, help serve the public trust, and individuals, including all men, women, races, colors, kinky, queers, even disabled persons. You know, sometimes we forget, my tribe is better than your tribe. It includes a hell of a lot more than just what's in this room. Appraisers don't need to be cajoled and berated and beat up on to just be unbiased, just be unbiased. We got to help them, folks. Thanks so much.
Thank you, George. I really appreciate George. And his courses are, he breaks it down, he goes through the art, there's a lot of material, there's a lot of folks on the call. One of my favorites, I don't know if you all ever get a chance to listen to Tim Anderson's podcast. He has the best voice in the appraisal business. He's like the quiet storm, and I was able to learn and pay attention. But one week, Tim's microphone was broke, and I was like, oh, the makeup is off. And so what I love the most about George's classes is, again, older appraisers, we have to unlearn the methodology of 3 comps and a cloud of dust. With the database analysis, it makes sense, but it's hard to retrain the brain when you've been doing something for 30 years. So, but teaching the younger folks, they get it. They can do it on their phone. They can pull up the graphs. And a couple of my students actually, they help me with it. So I'm always laughing because they're like, how do we apply this? I'm like, well, let's put it here and here. And I'm trying to act like I know what I'm doing. You know, I can't let them know that I don't really have a clue. But we get through it. And the other thing about each one teach one is when you're able to explain your analysis, then you actually know it. And they're able to explain it to each other to help them be able to get through it. So with that, I'm going to call up Mr. Bill Cunningham, just Googling, world-renowned economist who I've been blessed to be able to just hang on his words and information. So, and every time I think I'm gonna win best dress, he shows up. So,
Look, I got something for you. This is for you, so thank you very much. More homework for you, you know. So this is one of his books. He's got several. So but I'm gonna keep this one. You're gonna have to get your own.
Thank you, thank you. Firstly, one of the things I meant to do yesterday was shout out my cousin, Calvin Copeland. Calvin Copeland was born in South Carolina, moved to Washington, D.C., Army veteran, worked as a porter at the U.S. Department of Labor from 1955 to 1995. So being in that building, I felt, was in part due to I felt his presence in that building yesterday, and I meant to say that. So Calvin, forgive me, but I'm saying it now. I'm making it up now. Now, I'm an economist, and basically I've been working in this area for a very long time. So delighted to see what you got, what's going on now. It's really remarkable, the progress that you've made over this time period. So please keep going. As Thaddeus mentioned, if you look at the black-white wealth gap, the white median wealth is $284,000, black wealth is $44,000. What's the difference? A house. A house. A house explains that entire difference. So you guys might mess around and solve the black-white wealth gap yourself. So that's why I'm here. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you all very much for allowing me to come in. That's really about it. That's all I got, you know. I also want to shout out my two interns, Eric and Luke. Eric from University of Florida, Luke from Washington and Lee University, two of the best interns in Washington, D.C. Thank you, fellas, for coming out.
I mentioned to you all about our 1890 land grant tour. The biggest part of the 1890 land grant tour has been our 1890 USDA reps. And I have been blessed to have some very good 1890 USDA reps. All reps are not created equal. If you all know, people's budgets have been cut. And so I seen him, but I don't see him. But our 1890 USDA rep from Prairie View is here, and he made it on his own dime. And I'm just so proud of Mr. Horace Hodge. It's been awesome how they actually care about the students. They love on the students. I'm going to ask Mr. Hodge to come up and say a few words. If you all know anything about the HBCUs, they get less than 10% of all African American students, but yet they graduate over 80%. And the reason that is, okay, HU. So the reason is because they love, believe, and they serve. They damn sure ain't doing it for the money. So the money is few and far in between. And I just wanted to have Mr. Horace Hodge up here representing Prairie View and our USDA rep.
Well, thank you, Thaddeus. You know, I wasn't expecting this here, but I can tell you it's a pleasure to be here and to represent my alma mater, which is Prairie View A&M University. We actually hosted Thaddeus and his team, and we're working on some things through our career services, really to connect with our young people. It was interesting the other day, we have a program that's called Ag Discovery. And we actually had about 20 students, and we take them out to various entities. We give them insight on career opportunities. And I was speaking to them, and I told them, that real wealth in America is in land ownership. And it was ironic that during the closing ceremony, they had a group that actually used that quote to understand that equity, diversity, and inclusion in any aspect is a pathway forward to solving a lot of the problems that we have in our country. So I'm not going to take a whole lot of time. I enjoy the job. I'm a 48-year career service in USDA. I'm 1 year from retirement, but the beauty part of it is working with our young folk and trying to educate them and have them ready to lead. That is so important as we move forward. And they are smart. They have a lot of channel energy. We have to help them connect the dots. And I think this 10,000 minority appraisers in terms of helping them understand the wealth is so, so important. And I want to congratulate Thaddeus and his team, and thank you for the invite. We got a lot of work to do, and together we'll make it happen. Thank you.
That's Mr. Horace Hodge, our 1890 rep. Now, when I go to Texas and we go to Houston, we start off with Horace at Prairie View, but we never go to Texas without visiting Austin and our sister and one of my heroes, Miss Tasha Chang. Now, Tasha's one of my heroes. Let me give you a quick story. She's a superhero. 5 years ago, they told her she would never walk. Now she's walking, flying planes, running, jumping, doing everything under the sun. And my favorite Tasha story is she had a board of directors that wasn't quite following her vision. So she fired all 8 of them. So with that being said, I'd like to bring up, I'm proud to bring up one of our strategic partners, Ms. Tasha Chang, the president of ARIA in Austin.
Thank you, guys. Homeownership is a personal passion of mine, and so I prepared some remarks. Let me go ahead and read them. What is a home? It's more than just bricks and mortar. It's the foundation of a family unit, the bedrock upon which memories are built, and the capstone of generational wealth. We speak of the American dream, and when we inherently understand that it includes home ownership, this dream symbolizes stability, security, and prosperity. Historically, the real estate sector, particularly the field of real estate appraisal, was predominantly non-minority. The implications of this lack of diversity were far-reaching, affecting everything from the valuation of properties in minority neighborhoods to the opportunities available for minority professionals within this industry. Today, we can no longer say that. The landscape of real estate appraisal is changing, and it is changing for the better. With the initiatives that Thaddeus is founding, the 10,000 Minority Appraisers Foundation, we are paving the way for a more inclusive and representative industry. This foundation is not just a beacon of hope, it is aspiring for minority appraisers. It is a testament to the progress we are making as a society as a whole in America. We stand here today not just as a minority appraisers, but as equals, working alongside our non-minority appraisers. Together, we form a unit dedicated to fairness, accuracy, and the integrity in property valuation. Our collaboration enriches the industry of diverse perspectives, ensuring that every neighborhood and every homeowner receives a fair appraisal. This unity and this partnership reminds me of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s dream. He envisioned a nation where people would not be judged by the color of their skin, but the content of their character. Today, as I look around, I see that dream manifesting in our professional relationships right now. In our commitment to equality in real estate appraisal, I believe that Dr. King would be proud of how far we've come together, and he would be proud to work with Thaddeus today. However, our journey doesn't end here. The impact of minority real estate appraisers extend beyond the professional integration. It influences the fabric of our communities and the lives of individuals who for too long have been undervalued and overlooked. By ensuring our fair appraisals, we help bridge the wealth gap and provide opportunities for home ownership in communities that have historically been marginalized. Our work empowers families, allowing them to build wealth and secure their future for their future generations. It helps dismantle systematic barriers that have prevented many from achieving this American dream. When minority and non-minority appraisers work together, we create a more accurate and equitable housing market, fostering the trust and the confidence among homeowners and buyers alike. This is an industry of rapport. This is an industry of relationship. Let's bridge that gap and let's build those relationships with each other. In conclusion, the significance of our roles as minority appraisers cannot be overstated. We are just valuing properties. We are valuing lives, dreams, and futures. By standing alongside our non-minority partners, we are creating a legacy of fairness and inclusion. This is the true American dream, not just home ownership, but to be included in the conversation, to be included at a seat at the table. This is the new American dream, one that celebrates the diversity, champions equity, and ensures that every single voice is heard and valued. And I will stand here and I will talk to as many people as I have to until we see action. For too long, we have spoke about what is wrong in the system. We have said it's not fair, but I have seen little action done. Today, I want to see the action be done. And thank you, Thetis, for championing this. Let's give it a round.
Thank you, Tasha.
Thank you.
Well, all you good, wonderful people, everybody had a couple more drinks. Y'all looking a little bit more relaxed. The sun is up, going down. So I want to try to keep this thing moving. Next, I'd like to have Mr. Greg Powell from the Department of Interior. And I want him to speak a little bit about the outdated fee schedules and loss of value to lack of those, but also I want him to speak to the updated definitions of market value and Indian country and the updated highest and best use. He can give you the citations, chapter and verse, backwards and forwards, and I just enjoy talking to him because I learn all the time. So with that, I'm going to have up Mr. Greg Powell from the Department of Interior.
You were serious when you asked me to speak. I thought you were pulling my leg. You were serious, dang. Anyway, let me give you some numbers to kind of form the context of some of the work that we do. 5, the Department of Interior provides valuation services to 5 bureaus within the department. The Bureau of Land Management, the Bureau of Reclamation, the Park Service, and the Fish and Wildlife Service. The 5th one, the Bureau of Indian Affairs, is the one that, for me in my federal career, has provided me the most work, the most satisfaction, and the most joy of all that I've done. 574. There are 574 federally recognized Indian tribes in the United States. Not all of those are landed tribes, but most of them are. And those that are need valuation services from us. The Bureau of Indian Affairs provides about 90% of our workload on any given year. And that, to put that in a little bit more context, represents roughly 3,500 to 4,000 valuation products for the BIA each year. You know, that's a big number, but that's not a really big number. If you're doing residential work in a firm, you're easily doing a lot more than that. But for the federal government, that's a lot of work. That keeps us busy. Thaddeus asked me to speak directly to a couple of things. The first is the change to a regulation that made us in the department take a different look at how we value rights of way as they go across Indian lands. Formerly, that valuation process was just like any other right-of-way valuation process. It was a before and after methodology. You know, you would go in and you'd take a look at the effects of, or the value of the land before the right-of-way went across, and then again after. With that change back in 2016, the regulation now gives a lean in towards the landowner, and the value to the landowner can be as much as they really can negotiate. And it's not necessarily limited by the value that an appraisal puts on it, and it opens the door broadly to a negotiated value. Now that's always been in play if you were in the fee country or in the fee world. That hasn't always been the case in Indian country, at least not the way it was practiced. And the big change was because now it can be negotiated. Indian owners, Indian landowners now have the ability to go in and say, look, you're crossing my property with a right-of-way for an oil and gas pipeline, for an electrical transmission line, for a fiber optic right-of-way line. I want the value for me that's represented by the value that that line provides to you as it crosses my land. And that's really unusual. That's never really been practiced in right-of-way real estate valuation. And so that's groundbreaking, and it has the potential to enable Indian landowners to really change their lives individually. There's a lot of right-of-ways for fiber optic, for oil and gas pipeline, for electrical transmission lines as those cross Indian country, and that can be a stunning number when you look at it from that standpoint. So that's the first thing. The change, that's the change to market value. Thaddeus, help me out here. You wanted one more item while he's racking his brain and trying to get me some more information. I'll give you a couple of other numbers. As it relates to the Department of Interior, we have 112 real estate appraisers. Less than 20% of those are minority. And that's one of the things that we really want to change. We're actively trying to hire minority appraisers. And one of the things that we're doing to that end is we've established, and Francis, if you're here, I think you're over here behind the pole, wave your arm so everyone can see you. Talk to Francis. Francis is doing a wonderful job for us in leading our apprentice program, and she's getting out to the historic black colleges. She's getting out to the Indian colleges. She's getting into the minority communities in a big way, trying to get interest generated in working for the federal government as a real estate appraiser and as a minority. So kudos to you, Francis. Thank you for all your work. Thank you for everything that you're doing for us on that behalf. Thaddeus, I'll turn it back to you.
Thanks, Greg. I appreciate it. I don't know why they keep leaving this mic up high. So I want to go ahead and I want to bring up one more person. This is, he just recently got voted onto, and I'm going to mess this up, the Board of Trustees to the Appraisal Foundation. And they say they wanted some diversity. I don't know that they wanted this much swag on the board, but he changing the game with fashion and everything else. So I'm going to bring up Mr. Bilal Sharif from Atlanta, Georgia. Atlanta's own. He's a former president of the Young Realtors Division of the National Association of Real Estate Brokers. He's the past president of the Atlanta Empire Board of Realtors, which is the oldest African-American trade organization in the country. And my little brother, who I'm extremely proud of, Mr. Bilal K. Sharif.
Good evening, good evening. As y'all heard, like I said, I'm a native of Atlanta. I've literally known I wanted to do real estate since I was about 13 years old in middle school, so to now, be here where I am today, to have the opportunity to make the impact, through 10,000 minority appraisals, is just a blessing, and I'm honored. And I appreciate everything that, Thad has put here together, and gathered such a phenomenal group. Last time I was here, I think I said it was a blessing to be a blessing as we traveled to the different HBCUs and encouraging people to get into real estate and appraisals. But I just like to say it's a blessing, to be a blessing, to Thaddeus, everything that he has put together with 10K MA and the change that we're able to make here. As I mentioned, I'm not an appraiser, but I've been an authority in the, valuation space since I got started, and, to now to make it all the way up. Sometimes you're being positioned for things that you don't even know what you're being positioned for, qualified for things you don't even know what you're being qualified for. So my, selflessness and volunteering with these other organizations and going into the schools and colleges, when he formed it and he asked me to come along, it was no question, because it was right along with the mission of getting people into careers in real estate, and entrepreneurship. So I just say I thank you for everything you put together, my brother, and I think we just, owe him another round of applause for everything that he's done here in putting this together. As he mentioned, it's a rigorous process, and out of a ton of, qualified candidates, over 78 applicants, 3 rounds of interviews, I'm blessed to be, the youngest African American ever appointed on the Board of Trustees for the National Appraisal Foundation here. And that is just another blessing, through affiliation with 10,000 Minority Appraisal and exposing me here just as we continue to expose other young individuals to the industry. I was a music education major at Bethune-Cookman. I'm big on music. We're big on songs and, all of that. So in my remarks, I didn't really prepare anything, just coming from the heart. I joke with Thad all the time and say we got a soundtrack that we're making here, as we're making history. And the first song he said, he brought up with all this Kendrick Lamar beef, he said, they not like us, So I say that in a good way, because we all have a role to play, so they might not be like us, but it's going to take all of us to make the impact, because we all bring something unique, to the table. The second song that came to mind was Stevie Wonder, Signed, Sealed, and Delivered. So we might have just signed the first National Appraisal Apprenticeship program with the Department of Labor, but we're going to seal the opportunity by just making, the impact, collaborating with everybody here in the room, getting in the streets, and really, training them up to the next level. And it'll be delivered by the impact that we make out in the communities. And last but not least, in all my stories, things I do, I post a song, Sam Cooke, A Change Is Gonna Come. And that change is gonna come, like I say, through collaboration with all of us. And I'm just, proud to be here, proud of everything that's happened, and I'm honored for the opportunity.
Go with this mic all up high again. Let me bring it back down to a reasonable height. So I'm not going to really belabor this anymore. He got into songs. We talk about songs. One of our favorite arguments, we was riding to Alabama A&M, both excited to listen to the new Andre 3000 album. And so once I found out it was all flute music, I was totally disgusted. And he was excited about all the riffs on the flute. And I'm like, man, if you don't turn that off. And so we argued for 3 hours down, and I refused to listen to it anymore. But he talked about songs, but one of my favorite songs that I used to be forced to listen to when I was younger was a James Brown song, and I like to use that as our theme song for our organization. And I know most of you all are not old enough to remember this James Brown song, but it's about a 10-minute song, and the name of the song is, oh man, I can't even remember, brain fart. Okay, here it is. It is, I don't want nobody to give me nothing. Just open up the door, and I get it myself. So I try to tell the kids, I'm gonna open up the door, but you're gonna have to get it, and you're gonna have to work for it. And one of the things that I have, unfortunately, learned how to do my whole life is work, and that's because of my father back there in the corner who made his way up to D.C. Can you stand up just for a minute and wave? My father, Thaddeus Dawson Sr. So all my life I had to get up at 7 o'clock on Saturday morning and work. And I remember one time I was playing football and I had a late game on a Friday night, and I was like, well, I played a game on Friday night. And his response was, did you get a check? Until you start getting a check, but we're gonna still need to get up on Saturday morning at 7 o'clock. And so every morning, Saturday morning at 7 o'clock, without fail, I had to go to work, and that work has not left me. So I'm very grateful for all of those lessons. I got a million of them, but I won't bore you with all of those. I'd like to thank all of you all for coming out. I'd like to again thank Jacob Lillian from the Justice Department, now big time attorney at the Justice Department, but we work together at the Community Reinvestment Coalition. He's absolutely brilliant. I'd like to acknowledge young Kofi Moreau in the back, since I've known him since he was a wee tot, and now he does amazing work in the development space, converting office buildings into housing in the DC area. He's absolutely phenomenal. I'd like to thank my lifelong friend, Laritza Wright, and her, I'm sorry, her maiden name was Wright, her new name is Creer. They only been married for 25 years, but her husband is Michael Creer, I'm messing that up. So, quick story about Laritza. I broke my shoulder in the 8th grade, and so I couldn't write. And so when I had to take my Latin test, I had to get somebody who could write. Well, fortunately, Laritza spoke Latin forwards and backwards, and I never would have got out of Latin if she wouldn't take my test because I had a broken arm. And so I'm just thankful for her and her husband being here. I'm thankful for my team. I would be remiss without ending this without acknowledging them. You all met Bilal. We got Deborah Bryant and Kim Ville. They keep me on task. Regina Fraser, she also keeps me on task. Bridget, I can't see her from back this far. Okay, there she is. Bridget, and next to Bridget, we got Puddin. Puddin don't like to be called Puddin. Puddin's name is Charnicia. And then next to Bridget is her husband, Tim. And I'm just so thankful for Tim, because a couple times I made Bridget cry. And Tim would tell her, I'm gonna need you to toughen up. You working with the Martin Luther King of Appraisers, so you're gonna have to pull your pants up and tighten up your belt. And so Bridget proceeded to cuss me and Tim out. But I am very thankful and grateful for you all coming out today. I'd like to acknowledge Mr. Jim Parks back in the corner. Jim don't have a whole lot to say, but Jim touched me last year in Houston. He mentioned to me that he had read an article that I had co-authored in FA magazine. To this day, I think he's still the only person that read that article. So I hold on to that Jim Parks actually read something that I wrote. I feel like I'm an accomplished author. And then my man, I thought I was gonna be best dressed till Brandon Best showed up. Brandon is our CIAA connection. So Brandon runs all the CIAA tournaments, which are important. So he's been trying to get us to sponsor some events, and we've been trying to get our sponsors to sponsor us to sponsor some events. So we're working on all of that, and this is all about exposure for all of the HBCUs beyond the 1890 and the CIAA. There's over 104, and we've only begun to skim the surface. So I will conclude, and you all eat, drink, ask any questions. We got some brilliant people. I know a lot of people had to leave to go catch flights, but I'm thankful for everybody that participated, showed up, and stayed. And I look forward to working with you all. Thank you.